guys. Welcome to the Single Moms with Power podcast. Oh, I'm so excited. Y'all just don't know. Okay, so this podcast is to help educate, celebrate, and empower single moms. It's been a brainchild of mine for about 6 years now, and now it's coming to fruition, and I am really, really excited. This is my very, very first podcast. And I just want to let you guys know that it is here that you will find everything single mom. Like, this is my why, okay? So you'll be able to find like things on health and wellness. You'll be able to find things on or information on finances, because we got to get our coins right. And of course, everybody's favorite, which is relationships, and much, much more. So I am your host and the founder of Single Moms with Power, Nicole Harris. And any show ideas that, you want to listen to or, see in the future, or if you want to be a guest, you can just contact me. I have Facebook and Instagram, and my Facebook page is Single Moms with Power, and the Instagram page is single_mom_with_power. And so you can find me on any one of those. DM me, IM me, just holla at me. Let me know what you think. Okay. And I do want you to like my podcast. I want you to love it. I want you to subscribe. And I also want you to share it. Okay. So do that for me. All right. So right now, I need to ask you guys a question. I asked this on Facebook earlier, and I want to know from you guys. So what do you do when you have to take care of two brothers, a sister? You gotta roll, and you gotta sell weed for your crackhead mom. She was a crackhead. And you barely eat, and you're only 5 years old. Like, what do you do? Like, what kind of psyche does a 5-year-old have at that time in her life when she's going through all of this? Well, my guest today is a single mom of two. She is an alumni of UT of Austin, right?
Yes, correct.
And she's a vice principal of a pretty major high school here in Texas. And now the author of the book, Thank You for Smiling. I want you to welcome my beautiful, sweet, talented friend, Singh.
Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm so excited to be here and to help support Single Moms with Power. And I'm very, very honored that you invited me to talk about my book, which was released on July the 1st. Thank you for smiling.
Okay. Well, you are more than welcome to be here. Thank you so much for being my first guest.
Okay.
And you have an incredible survival story. And so we need to talk about it.
Okay.
So your book starts off when you were 5 years old.
Actually, the book starts when I'm 4. And so the opening scene is really when, and so the book is written as fiction, but it's very much inspired by my life growing up. As a child, my mother was a prostitute and involved in drugs and selling. And so it starts off really, the beginning scene is we're going up the mountains. And I was 4 years old. At that time, I had already understood the life that I lived, and I grew up from the beginning in survival mode. And so when you live in a home where at a very early age, the expectation is to be a caretaker, to be really, in many cases, a breadwinner, I started very early. As soon as I could walk and move, and my mother at that time found out how she could best use me, I was used very early. And so the opening scene starts when I was 4, and it's going along the main character in the book is Alma Perez, who's inspired by me, and they're going up in the mountains, and her mother sees her watching and looking at her siblings because in my life I really took on a more of a parental role with my younger siblings, even though we're all 1 year apart. And she ended up leaving me in the mountains. And that journey in Alma also was left in the mountains. And the kind of that journey then of not having that support, not feeling safe, not really understanding why that someone who claims to be your mother, because we're all raised and conditioned that the people who were supposed to take care of you are the one who brings you into the world, really kind of struggling with why me. Very, very early on. And so I have very vivid memories from as early as 3. But again, Alma's story and my falling through my story started at the age of 4.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. So, okay, your mom left you up on the mountain. Mm-hmm. People found you. Mm-hmm. They brought you back to, what was it?
They actually called a park ranger. The park ranger then just so happened when my mother went down the mountain, she was actually pregnant at that time, and so she went into labor.
With your sister? With
my younger sister, And so they reunited. We were reunited. But I remember thinking at that time, like, something's not right here. Mm-hmm. Like, how are you guys just going to get me back to this lady who just left me in the mountains?
So how did you get back?
How did I get back? They just gave me back to her.
Oh, so she was there.
Yeah, she was at the hospital because she had just given birth. And so from my understanding of that time, when she got back down and delivered, she made up the story that I got lost. Oh. But I did not get lost. She left me. Mm-hmm. And so I remember feeling that conflict. And so as you go through the book, you're going to see Alma really struggle with conflict, really, because what she knows should be the right thing and what's actually happening never quite ever match up. And then there's a lot of that internal struggle with why is this allowed to happen when everyone around can clearly see that what's going on is not right.
Right.
But not many people spoke up. And so Alma in the book and myself in real life had to learn how to be my own best advocate. Mm-hmm. And that advocacy really was about how to survive within the circumstances I was given.
It really was. Mm-hmm. Because throughout the book, or let's just take the first half of the book, like you had it rough, like with your mom, mm-hmm. Like as I was reading, like in the basement, being locked in a closet, just getting cigarette butts. I mean, cigarettes getting put out on you, and things of that nature. And I mean, you never know what goes on behind, closed doors.
Correct. And I think it's an important message for, I'm in education. And so part of the book was actually a challenge. To write the book was a challenge from a student because I share my story because I believe that when we share our stories, that's how we can best inspire other people. Because look, I made it. If I can do it, and I came from really literally nothing.
Right.
You can do it too. Right. And so I was challenged by a student to write the book. And really the purpose is that in spite of it all, every situation I went through, and I did have a lot of very abusive situations. You mentioned the basement. The basement in Colorado, it was actually not a full basement. It was more like a crawl space. The one that I had the most vivid memories of was kind of her form of punishment. And I really feel like looking back on my life now that I was really her scapegoat for whatever her issues and her self-doubt and her insecurities in life were that got projected onto me. Because in spite of it all, I was actually a pretty bright and smart kid. Yeah. I really loved to read. And that became my escape. But I think she saw something in me that could have been her. Mm-hmm. And I don't think she knew how to reconcile that with herself. And so she took all that anger of her life out on me because I was the female daughter, the oldest one that was there.
Right.
That was there.
So with that, basically they took you away from her. They took all of the children away from her. But before that, she left you guys.
Right.
Talk about that.
So in our home, there was an expectation that every day my mom would give me, and she did different types of drugs. So from heroin, marijuana, were the main two ones that we were most familiar with. Crack had just entered into the neighborhood in those early 90s. So that was kind of a new drug at that time. So the big drugs were marijuana and heroin. And so, I mean, we had to sell it. Like I would have to roll so many joints before I went to school, and I was not allowed to come back home. And because I was the caretaker of my siblings, so I would leave home, have whatever she wanted me to sell before I got home. I'd walk my two brothers to pre-K. We were in the same school. My little sister went to a local a community daycare. And I would walk them every day. That was the expectation. I would go to class. I would pick them up. We couldn't get home back in the door unless I gave her the money that she felt like needed to be in relationship to whatever she gave me to sell. I was smart enough to know to find the person I needed to sell to. So I wasn't really always around on the streets just, trying to find the next junkie to give stuff to. Right. You know your neighborhood. You know who your local crackheads are. You know who your heroin addicts are. You know who those people are when you grew up the way I grew up. Right. And so I just found that one person that I could go to and quickly sell to so I can get home. Well, I got home one day and she asked all of us to sit on the floor because we were really not allowed to sit on we had a couch that we had got from one of those Goodwill trucks. But she did not feel that kids were worthy to sit on furniture. Okay. So she treated us very much like animals. And so we had to sit on the floor. And I remember her saying, I'm about to go to the store because I was the oldest. You look after your brothers and your sister, and when I leave, you better not open this door for anybody. And that was the clearest message I remember very clearly. I can still see her face when she told it to me. Do not open this door for anybody. And so the neighborhood I grew up in, we didn't have a lot of trust for like police and stuff. And so if a police officer came to your door, you didn't open it. And so eventually we end up living from my recollection, and like the records are not clear. I can't remember the exact date, but it's somewhere between 3 to 4 weeks we lived by ourselves.
Wow.
Every morning I would still get up because we were in school. I would take my siblings to school, to daycare. I would go steal food because she didn't leave us. She left us a bag of rice, but the gas was cut off, so I couldn't use the stove to cook the rice because I knew how to do that. And so eventually somebody must have noticed the weight loss, the smelling. And I was 5 years old. Yeah. And I was taking care of a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an 18-month-old. See, so, somebody finally noticed that something was wrong. Right. And notified the police. And then one evening they came to the door and there was a loud, everyone knows the police knock. Right. And he says, I know you're in there. Open the door. But my mother already told me not to open the door. And because I feared her more than anyone else, because my biggest fear was being abused or hurt or put in the basement or removed from my siblings so I couldn't take care of them, because that was part of her torture. Right. If she would lock me away, I could not take care of my siblings, and that was the most important thing for me at that time. Right. So eventually I made a decision to open the door, and the day that I opened the door is the day that we entered into foster care.
So let's talk about foster care.
Okay.
I mean, that in and of itself right there at 5. Oh my God. Like, I can just remember like at 5, most people can remember at 5 just being in kindergarten, just trying to remember our ABCs and, how to add and subtract, right. I mean, depending on what school you went to, right. But, like to know what to do on the stove, to, take care of 3 younger children, than you, that is incredible in and of itself, like I said. But now you're in foster care. Let's talk about that. Like, how was that?
I hated foster care. I'm not going to say that every foster parent that I had was a bad person. I really truly believe that the majority of the people who entered into the foster care system as foster parents, most of them came through the church, and this was their mission, their way of, showing their grace to God and whatever. I really do believe it came from a good place. Right. most of them.
Right.
But I didn't get to stay at those that long. The
Okay.
ones I stayed at the longest were the ones that were emotionally, mentally, and physically and spiritually abusive to me. And so once we were separated, so we went, all of us were together at our first temporary foster home, and foster homes have different levels. So there's, emergency stays, which, could be just 24 hours. You have temporary, could be, no more than a month. And then you have your long-term placements. I think we were a little harder to place because we are the brown shades of the rainbow, because all of our fathers were different fathers.
Right.
John's, I always tell people the reason I'm here is because it was a nice, crisp $20 bill, and this is why I'm here. But
Wow.
but really it was, just really trying to keep us together because that's all we had. And I don't think at that time foster care would really try to put you with families that look like you or you
Right.
look the most like.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're multiracial, and like my sister looked very white, so she was adoptable and she was younger. As you know, in foster care, the older you get, the more difficult it is to adopt you. The more minority you are, the more difficult it is to adopt you. And so my brothers eventually went off and lived in they stayed together the longest. My sister was taken away and put in her own foster home. And then I just kind of moved around because I was not really an adoptable kid at that time. But I had foster home experiences where they used that position for power. And I remember feeling majority of my time that I just felt like I was a commodity. Like I knew my foster parents were getting money for me to live with them. And I felt like I was the commodity that was getting them that paycheck. So I felt like a paycheck. Yeah.
You said that they had you cleaning a lot and kind of, just kind of talk to you just crazy at different times, the different homes that you were in and everything. So I'm going to jump a little ahead and I'm going to kind of, because I don't want to give like all of the book away because we can go like chapter by chapter. But I'm going to skip ahead and you were 15 and you had just had enough of being in foster care. And you told your caseworker, hey man, I'm out.
Right. So in the book, Alma is around 16 when she does a partial emancipation.
Right.
In real life, I actually emancipated at 17.
Okay.
So I just got tired. I got tired of moving from group home to foster home to a group home. I actually lived in a group home. It was my last placement, and I moved to an area that I experienced a lot of racism. I lived in an area called Canyon City in Colorado, and there was maybe 3 minorities in the whole school. It's a prison town, so the joke in the school was like, you're not the minority in the building because or in the town because you have the 2-3 prisons that are in the town that are full with people that look like me. So I just got tired of being called a nigger. I got tired of being told I'm not good enough, and I just got to a point where I was just over it.
Yeah.
Like I had survived.
Right.
I had made it. I was smart enough to figure out how to feed the 4 of us when I was 5. So I damn sure knew how to take care of myself.
That's right.
At the age of 17. So I was a partial emancipation. I still had a caseworker all the way up until I graduated from high school. Actually, all the way through my 18th year, even when I went to college, I still had until I turned 19. I still was getting some monetary support that would typically have gone to a foster parent. So I still had some state support, but all in all, I lived in my own apartment, had my own car. I had to work. I worked 50, 60 hours a week. I still went to school, graduated, top of my class. So all of those things were still in place because I just knew my future was bigger and better and brighter than my beginnings. So
cool.
Yeah.
Good. So when you were emancipated, and you worked 2 jobs. You had your own little hoopty,
Yes.
and
76 Toyota Celica.
hey. I had a 78 Datsun B210.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you were working the two jobs, you were going to school, you were, trying to make it back and forth from like one city to the other city. What did you like? What was going through your head at that time? I know it was, I just need to graduate. Mm-hmm. I just need to just get out of here. But and you knew you were smart, mm-hmm. you knew you were well read, mm-hmm. And you knew that you had a ticket out some kind of way, shape, or form. But what did the school do to you?
Well, the school did two things. So I'm going to back up a little bit. The title of the book, Thank You for Smiling, actually came from a teacher.
Right.
A teacher gave me a note. I had learned to be invisible, because the more invisible you are, the less hurt occurs to you. And so I became really good at being invisible at school. I was smart. I did my work and just leave me alone. And one day she recognized I was reading my own book inside of my textbook because I had already did my work. She came up to my desk. Her name was Mrs. Cotman, and she put this little sticky note, which is the cover, that said, "Thank you for smiling." And later that day at recess, and I remember feeling highly emotional about it. I mean, it was a note, but at that time, I was like 12. I didn't understand the impact of the note. Mm-hmm. But I understood that it impacted me. Like, I felt something when she put that note on my desk.
Right.
Later on, I went to recess. I was standing on the wall because I did not talk to her. She said, "Sol, you have the power to write your own ticket in this world, but you've got to let people help you." At that time, I was like, "Lady, whatever, mm-hmm. Can you go mind other kids? Like, why y'all in my business?" But as life has moved on, I kept the note. And I will always say that note gave me my humanity. For the first time in my life, I felt like somebody noticed me for me. Mm-hmm. And so then as fast forwarded, that was the kind of the nugget, like, you can't take away my ticket because I'm the one holding my ticket. And so when I got in high school, mm-hmm. and I knew I was the top of my class, I knew I was, capable of reaching the greatest heights because I remember I had my ticket.
Right.
I filled out all my scholarships. I had done all this stuff. The school counselor, because everything had to go through the school counselor because they sent off the final signature or whatever. I just did what I was told to do.
Right.
Give all your stuff to the counselor and he'll take care of it. Well, right. I gave my stuff to the counselor. And as I'm sitting there, I'm realizing that people around me are getting, acceptance letters or getting scholarships that I knew very well that I was more qualified and I had applied for the same thing.
Right.
And so I actually went to my counselor one day to kind of figure out, like, what's the deal? I'm not hearing anything because, I had to do all the research. No one sat down and talked to me about it. I actually went in his office and I saw the folder with all my scholarships and everything I had filled out on a shelf behind his desk. And so I lost it. But I had learned to advocate for myself. Mm-hmm. So I immediately went down to the principal's office and said, "Your counselor doesn't respect me," because that counselor actually told me that the best course for me would be to sign up at Pikes Peak Community College and go into a secretarial program. And while that's a noble profession for those that do it, that was not what my destiny was.
Right.
And for him to tell me that all I'm good for is to go to a community college, like, that's just the height of where I can be. And making comments to the fact, like, you're still doing better than the rest of your family.
Right.
Like, so why do I have to start here? Why can't I be up here? Mm-hmm. And I just refused to accept that. And so I fought for, I actually went to the board. I made a petition. I wanted him to lose his job. That's what I was going in there for. Right. But then I was able to secure some support, financial support for my first year of college.
And that was at
the University of Texas in Austin.
University of Texas,
yes.
Austin. And you graduated with your baby on your hip.
Yes, I graduated. I actually had my son, Tobias. I actually went into labor during my last final of my junior year. And it was a criminology professor, and he told me, he goes, "You can't miss the final, you're going to get a 0. So I'm like, I'm just going to have to breathe through this. So I took my final and had my son. And so my senior year, my son went to pretty much, because I couldn't afford it. I was a college student, even though I worked, but I worked to pay the bills. Right. My son went to all my classes with me. He went to work with me. We were always together. And so he was such an integral part of my experience at UT that when I graduated, he was a part of that ceremony.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So, given all of this that you have gone through, everything that you have gone through, what would you conclude to be like a solution for, if you can, for the foster care system, and maybe for someone who has a challenge that they're going through right now, may not be in foster care, but just at home, or they want to break out, or they have this great ability to catch on to things quickly, learn real quick. What would your advice be to someone who is in that position where they are surviving, they are, and they're young, they're young, or it might be a mom who sees her child trying to do this, or maybe your words may be convicting someone right now that, maybe have that abusive mindset where they take everything out on their child or whatever. What would your advice be for them?
Oh, girl, that's a lot of questions.
I know, girl.
So let me break that down. So first, really, the first question is regarding the foster care system. I truly believe, and even in the book, Alma addresses, she actually goes to a conference where she's recognized and addresses the caseworkers. It was a family service conference or whatever. So caseworkers and everyone who kind of works in that system was there. I really have the greatest, utmost respect for people who work in the human service industry, those who work in foster care, caseworkers, therapists, all of those professionals who basically become almost like the surrogate parents for these kids who are left with no one. But they're overworked, and they're very underpaid.
Yeah.
It's very hard to be a highly effective caseworker for especially your higher need kids, or the ones that are like me that was not adoptable. I didn't have a lot of needs, but I was not going to stay in a foster home too long if I didn't feel comfortable. If you have 300 kids on your caseload, you cannot give them quality services. You have to take the most dire situations first and focus your energy on that, and then you work your way down. And so I give the greatest respect for those that work in that industry. So for a solution for them, they just need to, the government, those that have power need to fund those services better. For people who are just struggling in life and going through obstacles, throughout the book, you'll see Alma, she'll always say, I'm just going to go to sleep, I'm going to wake up tomorrow, and it's got to get a little bit better.
Yeah.
Every wound I've ever had on my body, every burn mark, every cut, every bruise, every broken bone, every broken heart, it mends. Time does heal.
Yes, it does.
It doesn't make you forget because it just makes you stronger.
That's right.
A little calloused in some kind of ways, but just keep pushing forward. That's my advice. You think today's bad? Go to sleep, wake up, because you had if you're given another chance to wake up, you have another opportunity to make it better.
Yep.
And I tell the students, everyone I work with, I said, at the end of the day, this is your life to live, and it's your death to die. And I want to be accountable for my life. Yes, negative things have happened to me. Yes, there's a lot of negative things that happen to a lot of people. And as bad as my situation was, there are people in this world who have it way worse. So I always still find the blessing even in my situation, because you know what? I came on the other side.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that I saw in my life who didn't make it to the other side.
Right.
Their journey stopped very prematurely because they gave up on themselves.
Right.
Mrs. Cotman gave me my ticket, and I held that golden ticket that I have the power, I have the control of my life. And yes, anything is going to come at me and it might affect me, but ultimately how I respond and then what I do with my life next is not because of this situation, it's because what I choose to do with my life next.
That's right. Well, I just want to thank you for sharing the first part of your life, because I know that this is just the beginning.
Right.
This is just the beginning. You are incredible. You are an incredible soul. And look, no pun intended, but well, maybe pun intended.
All right.
but you are. And I'm so blessed to be your friend, and I can just keep asking you question after question after question, but we are all out of time. So I want you to tell everybody where they can get the book.
Okay, so right now, thank you for smiling. is available on all e-commerce markets. It's on barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, also lulu.com. Please, by all means, please check out the book. It is something I'm very proud of. And I hope that it inspires someone to pick up their ticket and regardless of what they're going to keep smiling through it all.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, So, and thank you guys for joining us. I'll see you guys next time with another guest on the Single Moms with Power podcast. Thanks.